My ex-husband convinced my employer I had died. My paycheck stopped. I stared at my laptop screen, refreshing my bank account for the fifth time in 10 minutes. The balance hadn't magically changed, $247.83. My direct deposit should have hit 3 days ago. This has to be a mistake, I muttered, grabbing my phone to call Meridian Marketing's payroll department. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and I'd already burned through my lunch break trying to figure out why my $3,200 biweekly paycheck had vanished into thin air. Hi, this is Sarah Chen calling about my missing paycheck, I said when Janet from HR picked up. The silence on the other end stretched uncomfortably long. Sarah? Janet's voice was strange, almost breathless. Sarah Chen from the digital marketing team? Yes, that's me. My direct deposit didn't come through on Tuesday, and I need to. Oh my god. Janet's gasp cut me off. Sarah, we were told you died. Your brother-in-law called Monday morning. He said there was a car accident over the weekend and that you had passed away. We stopped all payroll and started processing your final paperwork. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto my kitchen table. I could hear Janet's voice, tiny and distant, calling my name through the speaker. Died? Someone called my work and said I was dead? I picked up the phone with shaking fingers. Janet, I'm very much alive. I was here Tuesday. I attended the 10 a.m. strategy meeting via Zoom. I submitted the Henderson campaign revisions. But we have a record of the call. Hold on. I heard keyboard clicking. Monday, 8:15 a.m. The caller identified himself as Marcus Chen, said he was your brother-in-law. He knew your employee ID number, your department, even mentioned that you'd been dealing with some personal issues lately due to your divorce. Marcus Chen. My blood turned to ice. My ex-husband's name was Marcus, but his last name was Rodriguez. We'd been separated for 8 months, and the divorce papers were supposed to be finalized next week. But he knew I'd gone back to using my maiden name, Chen, after we separated. He knew my employee ID because I used to vent to him about work problems back when I thought he actually cared. Janet, that wasn't my brother-in-law. That was my ex-husband. We're going through a difficult divorce, and this is apparently his latest attempt to destroy my life. Another long pause. Are you saying someone committed fraud by impersonating a family member to report a false death? That's exactly what I'm saying. My voice was steadier now, though my hands were still trembling. Marcus Rodriguez, attorney at Whitmore, Sterling and Associates downtown. He called pretending to be my brother-in-law Marcus Chen. Jesus Christ, Janet whispered. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I'll need to get my supervisor involved immediately. I've never seen anything like this. We'll need to document everything and probably contact our legal department. I looked around my apartment, the stack of bills on the counter, the eviction notice that had been taped to my door yesterday, the nearly empty refrigerator. Marcus knew exactly what he was doing. He knew I lived paycheck to paycheck since I'd been covering all the divorce attorney fees myself. He knew missing even one payment would send my carefully balanced financial house of cards tumbling down. But as the initial shock wore off, something else began building in my chest. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that. It was something colder, more calculated. Marcus had finally made a mistake big enough to bury him. Janet, I need you to save that phone record. Don't let anyone delete or modify it. This is evidence of fraud. Of course, absolutely. Sarah, I'm escalating this to Linda Morrison, our VP of Human Resources, right now. Can you come in tomorrow morning? We'll need to straighten out your payroll immediately and document everything that happened. After hanging up, I sat staring at my laptop screen, my mind racing. Marcus wasn't just vindictive, he was stupid. As a lawyer, he had to know that impersonating someone to commit fraud was a felony. But his arrogance had always been his weakness. He probably thought he was untouchable, that I'd be too devastated and financially desperate to fight back. My phone buzzed with a text from my landlord, Sarah, need to discuss the late rent. Call me today or we proceed with eviction Monday, I screenshotted the message, then opened a new document on my laptop titled Marcus Fraud Documentation. I started typing everything I could remember, dates, times, Janet's exact words about the phone call. Then I called my divorce attorney, Patricia Vance. Sarah? I wasn't expecting to hear from you until Monday's hearing. Patricia, we need to talk. Marcus just committed fraud against my employer, and I think this changes everything about our settlement negotiations. I explained the situation while she took notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. This is serious, Sarah. Really serious. If we can prove he deliberately sabotaged your income, especially right before the final hearing, it could constitute economic abuse and fraud. But I need to ask, are you absolutely certain it was Marcus? Janet said the caller knew my employee ID, my department details, and mentioned the divorce. The only person outside my workplace who knows all that information is Marcus. Plus, he used the name Marcus Chen. It's not exactly subtle. We need to move fast. I'm going to contact the prosecutor's office tomorrow morning about potential criminal charges. In the meantime, document everything, every financial impact this has caused. The eviction notice, any late fees, overdraft charges, everything. After we hung up, I made a list of everyone I needed to call, my bank about the potential overdraft situation, my credit card companies to explain why payments might be late, my utility companies. The ripple effects of Marcus's sabotage were going to touch every corner of my life. But then I thought about his life. Marcus worked for Whitmore, Sterling and Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. They represented Fortune 500 companies, handled million-dollar mergers. Their reputation was everything. What would senior partner James Whitmore think when he learned that one of his associates had committed felony fraud against his own ex-wife? I pulled up the law firm's website and found their ethics hotline number. My finger hovered over my phone's keypad. Calling them now felt nuclear. It would definitely end Marcus's career, possibly his entire legal future. A year ago, I would have hesitated. The woman who'd married Marcus, who'd believed his promises and overlooked his controlling behavior, might have tried to handle this quietly. But that woman hadn't had her ex-husband literally erase her from existence to try to make her homeless. I dialed the number. Whitmore, Sterling and Associates Ethics Hotline. This is Rebecca speaking. Hi Rebecca, I need to report serious criminal behavior by one of your attorneys. This involves fraud and impersonation, and I believe it violates your professional conduct standards. I see. Can you provide the attorney's name and the nature of the allegations? Marcus Rodriguez, and he just committed identity fraud against his ex-wife's employer. I'll need to take down your contact information and the details of your allegations, Rebecca said, her tone shifting to careful professionalism. Please understand that we take these matters very seriously. I spent 15 minutes walking her through everything, Marcus's fraudulent call to my HR department, the financial devastation he'd caused, the timing right before our divorce finalization. Rebecca asked detailed questions about dates, Marcus's position at the firm, and whether I had documentation. Ms. Chen, I want to be transparent with you about our process. We'll open an investigation within 24 hours, but I need to inform you that Mr. Rodriguez is currently representing Caldwell Industries in a $50 million acquisition that closes Monday morning. The timing of your call is significant. My stomach dropped. Are you saying you won't investigate because it's inconvenient? Not at all. But you should know that if these allegations are substantiated, the consequences will be immediate and severe. Mr. Rodriguez would be suspended pending criminal investigation, which could jeopardize a major client transaction. After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and terror. Marcus always bragged about the Caldwell deal, how it would make him a lock for junior partner. He'd been working 18-hour days for months, convinced this case would secure his future at the firm. Now his own actions might destroy everything in one spectacular collapse. My phone rang. Marcus's contact photo filled the screen, that confident smile from our honeymoon in Cabo, back when I thought he was charming instead of calculating. Hello, Marcus. Sarah. His voice was tight. We need to talk. Do we? I was under the impression I was dead. Hard to have conversations from beyond the grave. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. I don't know what you think you know, but... Marcus Chan, I interrupted. That's what you called yourself when you phoned my HR department Monday morning at 8:15 a.m. Employee ID 47291. You told them I died in a car accident. I heard him inhale sharply. Sarah, listen to me. You're upset, and rightfully so, but let's think about this rationally. We can work something out. The divorce hearing is Monday, we can adjust the settlement terms. I can make sure you're taken care of financially. Are you trying to bribe me into not reporting your fraud? I'm trying to solve this problem before it destroys both our lives. If you pursue this, yes, I'll face consequences. But so will you. You think this makes you look stable? The vindictive ex-wife who calls my employer with wild accusations right before a major deal closes? The manipulation was so textbook it almost made me laugh. Classic Marcus, twist the situation until somehow I was the unreasonable one. Actually, Marcus, I think documenting your felony fraud makes me look like someone who won't be steamrolled by her abusive ex-husband. Abusive? His voice cracked with indignation. Sarah, I never laid a hand on you. Economic abuse is still abuse. And calling my employer to eliminate my income so I become homeless? That's not just abuse, it's criminal. My laptop chimed with an email notification. The sender made my blood freeze, James Whitmore himself, senior managing partner. Asterisk Ms. Chen, I understand you've contacted our ethics department regarding Marcus Rodriguez. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow at 9 a.m. to discuss this matter personally. Please confirm your availability. James Whitmore asterisk. Marcus, I have to go, I said, staring at the email. Sarah, wait. Don't do anything hasty. I know I made a mistake, but... The only mistake was thinking you could destroy my life without consequences. I hung up and immediately called Patricia. Sarah? How did the ethics hotline call go? Patricia, James Whitmore wants to meet with me tomorrow morning. The senior partner himself. Jesus. Sarah, that means they're taking this very seriously. Whitmore doesn't personally involve himself unless something threatens the firm's reputation. But you need to be careful, he's going to be protecting his firm's interests, not yours. Outside my apartment window, the sun was setting over downtown, casting long shadows across the city where Marcus thought he ruled his little legal kingdom. Tomorrow morning, I'd walk into that gleaming office tower and watch his world crumble. The scared woman who'd been checking her bank balance this morning felt like a stranger. That evening, I spent 3 hours documenting every financial consequence of Marcus's fraud. Late fees from my credit card company, $35. Overdraft charge from my rent check bouncing, $30. The grocery store declining my card in front of a line of customers yesterday, priceless humiliation, but I noted it anyway. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Is this Sarah Chen? The voice was unfamiliar, professional. Yes, who's calling? This is Detective Maria Santos with the Financial Crimes Unit. I understand you want to file a report about identity fraud? My heart hammered. Yes, but I wasn't expecting anyone to call tonight. Your attorney, Patricia Vance, reached out to our office. She said this was time-sensitive given court proceedings Monday. I'd like to get your statement tonight if possible. This kind of fraud case moves fast once we start the investigation. I walked Detective Santos through everything while she took detailed notes. She asked me to email her screenshots of my bank account, the eviction notice, Janet's contact information at Meridian Marketing. Ms. Chen, I need to be straight with you. Proving your ex-husband made that call isn't going to be simple. Unless your HR department recorded the conversation, it's essentially your word against his. My stomach sank. But they have the call logged. They know someone claiming to be Marcus Chen called. Right, but Marcus Rodriguez could argue someone else made the call using that name. We'll need more evidence to build a solid case. Phone records, maybe additional witnesses who can testify about his behavior patterns. After hanging up, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. What if Marcus was smart enough to beat this? What if he convinced everyone I was just a vindictive ex-wife making false accusations? At 6:23 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications. 5 missed calls from Marcus, all between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. 12 text messages, starting apologetic and escalating to frantic. Sarah, we need to talk before you meet with Whitmore. Asterisk I can explain everything. This got out of hand, asterisk. You don't understand what you're doing to my career. 20 years of building my reputation and you want to destroy it over one mistake? Asterisk, I'm begging you. Let's work this out privately, asterisk. Sarah, answer your fucking phone. Asterisk, you want to play hardball? Fine. I know things about you too, asterisk. Asterisk, remember your little drinking problem freshman year? How about that time you got arrested for, asterisk? The message is cut off abruptly. Whatever he'd been about to threaten me with, he'd apparently thought better of it. I screenshotted everything and forwarded it to Patricia with a note, Exhibit B for the harassment file. At 8:15 a.m., I stood in the marble lobby of the Whitmore building, wearing my best interview suit and carrying a folder thick with documentation. The building screamed old money and established power, exactly the kind of place Marcus had always dreamed of conquering. The elevator whisked me to the 42nd floor, where James Whitmore's assistant, an elegant woman in her 50s, greeted me with careful professionalism. Ms. Chen? Mr. Whitmore is ready for you. James Whitmore looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of a senior law partner, silver-haired, immaculately dressed, with the kind of confident bearing that came from decades of winning. His corner office overlooked the entire city. Ms. Chen, thank you for coming in. I'll be direct, the allegations you've made against Marcus Rodriguez are extremely serious. If substantiated, they would result in his immediate termination and likely disbarment. I understand that, Mr. Whitmore. Before we proceed, I want you to know that Marcus has requested this meeting. He's waiting in our conference room, and he'd like the opportunity to address these allegations directly with you present. My blood turned cold. He's here? Now? He's been here since 6 a.m., actually. He seems quite distressed about this situation. Whitmore studied my face carefully. Of course, you're under no obligation to speak with him. But he's claiming there's been a misunderstanding, and frankly, if there's any chance this can be resolved without destroying a promising attorney's career. The door to Whitmore's office opened, and Marcus walked in. He looked terrible, unshaven, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. But his eyes held that same calculating look I'd learned to fear during our marriage. Hello, Sarah, he said quietly. Thank you for agreeing to hear me out. I hadn't agreed to anything, but Whitmore was already gesturing for us to sit at the small conference table in his office corner. Now then, Whitmore said, Marcus, you wanted to explain your side of this situation. Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped. Sarah, I made a terrible mistake. I was angry about the divorce, feeling like I was losing everything, and I called your work intending to just ask about your schedule. But when they assumed I was a family member reporting an emergency, I panicked and went along with it. The lie was so smooth, so reasonable sounding, that for a moment I almost doubted my own memory. You told them I was dead, Marcus. I know how it sounds, but I was going to call back and correct it. I needed time to figure out how to fix things between us. Whitmore nodded thoughtfully. Marcus has proposed a resolution. He'll make full financial restitution for any damages you've suffered, and he's willing to accept a formal reprimand in his file. In exchange, you'd agree not to pursue criminal charges or further ethics complaints. I looked between them, two powerful men in expensive suits, trying to clean up Marcus's mess with money and backroom deals. What about the Caldwell acquisition? I asked. Whitmore's eyebrows rose slightly. That's not really relevant to. It closes Monday morning. Worth $50 million. Marcus told me it would make his career. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus's face had gone pale. Sarah, please. Because I'm wondering if your generous settlement offer has more to do with protecting that deal than protecting me. Whitmore's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Ms. Chen, I assure you that our client obligations and this ethics matter are entirely separate. Are they? I pulled out my phone and opened my voice recorder app, setting it on the table between us. Because I'd like to make sure I understand your offer correctly. Marcus commits felony fraud that nearly makes me homeless, and your solution is a slap on the wrist and some hush money? Marcus reached for my phone. Sarah, you can't record. Don't touch my property. My voice was ice cold. And yes, I absolutely can record this conversation. Illinois is a one-party consent state, as you should know, counselor. Whitmore held up a hand. Let's all take a breath here. Ms. Chen, I understand you're upset. Mr. Whitmore, do you have children? The question clearly caught him off guard. Yes. 2 daughters. If someone called their employers and told them your daughters were dead, causing their paychecks to stop and putting them at risk of eviction, what would you want to happen to that person? Whitmore was quiet for a long moment, studying me with new attention. I would want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Exactly. I leaned back in my chair. So why is Marcus different? Because he works for you? Because he's handling an important case? Marcus's composure finally cracked. Sarah, for Christ's sake, I said I was sorry. What more do you want? You want me to grovel? Fine, I'm groveling. But if you destroy my career over this, you're destroying both our futures. You think the settlement you'll get from a disbarred lawyer living in his parents' basement is going to set you up for life? There it is, I said softly. The real Marcus. Not the apologetic victim who panicked and made a mistake. You're threatening me again. Whitmore's expression had shifted completely. He was looking at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. Marcus, Whitmore said slowly, perhaps you should return to the conference room while I speak with Ms. Chen privately. But sir, I think if I could just explain. Now, Marcus. After Marcus left, Whitmore walked to his window, hands clasped behind his back. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. 27 years I've been practicing law, he said finally. I've seen attorneys make every kind of mistake you can imagine. Billing errors, missed deadlines, even embezzlement. But what you're describing, deliberately sabotaging someone's livelihood out of spite. He shook his head. That's not a mistake. That's character. So what happens now? Now I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you have any proof beyond the HR department's phone log that Marcus made that call? My heart sank. Detective Santos said the same thing. Without a recording, it's hard to prove. That's what I thought. Whitmore returned to his desk and opened a folder. Ms. Chen, I'm going to share something with you that I probably shouldn't. 3 months ago, we received a complaint about Marcus from a paralegal named Jennifer Walsh. She claimed he'd been harassing her, making unwanted advances. The complaint was detailed. I felt sick. What happened to her? She withdrew the complaint after Marcus's attorney convinced her it would damage her career prospects. We couldn't pursue it without her cooperation. Whitmore's expression was grim. Jennifer left the firm 2 weeks later. Found a position with a smaller practice across town. You're telling me Marcus has done this before? I'm telling you that your allegations fit a pattern of behavior that concerns me deeply. Whitmore pulled out his phone. Jennifer, this is James Whitmore. I need to speak with you today about Marcus Rodriguez. It's urgent. While he left a voicemail, I processed this new information. Marcus hadn't just targeted me, he was apparently a serial manipulator who used his position and legal knowledge to intimidate women. Mr. Whitmore, I want to ask you something. If I drop this complaint, what happens to the next woman Marcus decides to destroy? What happens when he gets that promotion and has even more power to hurt people? Whitmore set down his phone and looked at me directly. Ms. Chen, off the record? I think Marcus Rodriguez is a liability this firm can't afford. The question is whether we have enough evidence to act on it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, this is Jennifer Walsh. Mr. Whitmore called me. Can we meet today? I have recordings, asterisk. I showed Whitmore the message. For the first time since I'd arrived, he smiled. Ms. Chen, I think your case just got significantly stronger. 2 hours later, I sat across from Jennifer Walsh at a coffee shop 6 blocks from the Whitmore building. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 26, with the kind of sharp professional appearance that screamed ambition. But her hand shook slightly as she set up her laptop. I never thought I'd be doing this, Jennifer said, pulling up an audio file on her screen. After I left Whitmore, I tried to put Marcus behind me. But when Mr. Whitmore called and explained what he did to you. She shook her head. I can't let him keep destroying women. You recorded him? Multiple conversations. Illinois is one-party consent, and after the first incident, I started documenting everything. Her voice was steady, but I could see the old anger flickering in her eyes. Marcus cornered me in the file room on March 15th. Said he could make my career or break it, depending on how cooperative I was willing to be. She clicked play on the first recording. Marcus's voice filled my earbuds, smooth and calculated. Jennifer, I've been watching your work on the Morrison case. Impressive attention to detail. The kind of skills that could take you places in this firm, with the right mentorship, of course. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I really appreciate the feedback. Call me Marcus. I think we could work very well together. Maybe discuss it over dinner this weekend? I know a place downtown, very discreet. The conversation continued for 12 minutes. Marcus never explicitly crossed the line, but the implications were crystal clear. When Jennifer politely declined the dinner invitation, his tone shifted subtly. That's unfortunate. I hope you'll reconsider. Sometimes opportunities don't come around twice in this business. There are 4 more recordings, Jennifer said, pausing the playback. Each one escalates. By April, he was making direct threats about tanking my performance reviews if I didn't show more appreciation for his mentoring. I felt nauseated. Jennifer, why didn't you take these to the police? With what charge? Sexual harassment is a civil matter, and he was careful never to explicitly proposition me. His threats were always couched in corporate speak. She laughed bitterly. Plus, Marcus made sure I knew exactly what would happen if I caused trouble. He had HR pull my employment file during one of our meetings, just casually mentioned that my college disciplinary record was concerning. What disciplinary record? A noise complaint from sophomore year. I got written up for a party that was too loud. Marcus somehow got access to my background check and twisted it into evidence of poor judgment and party girl behavior. Jennifer's jaw clenched. He said no law firm would hire someone with character issues if word got around. The parallels to his threats against me last night were chilling. Marcus had a playbook for psychological manipulation, and he'd used it on both of us. But here's the thing, Jennifer continued, clicking to another file. Marcus got sloppy after I announced I was leaving. This recording is from my exit interview, when he thought he'd won. The new audio was Marcus and another male voice I didn't recognize. Jennifer whispered, that's Brad Sullivan, another associate. Marcus's voice came through clearly, Jennifer Walsh, problem solved. Sometimes you have to get creative with problem employees. Amazing what people will do when they think their whole future is on the line. Creative how? Brad asked. Let's just say I have friends in HR who understand the importance of thorough background checks. And Jennifer learned that fighting back just makes things worse for everyone involved. My blood ran cold. Marcus was bragging about manipulating Jennifer's employment records and using insider HR connections to threaten her career. Jennifer, this is evidence of conspiracy and workplace retaliation. I know. But there's more. She pulled up an email chain on her laptop. After I left Whitmore, Marcus sent these to 3 other firms where I'd applied. The emails were masterpieces of subtle character assassination. Marcus had written to contacts at each firm, expressing concern about Jennifer's application. He mentioned her difficulty accepting feedback, her tendency toward dramatic accusations, and suggested that hiring her might create unnecessary workplace disruptions. 2 of the firms withdrew their offers after receiving these emails, Jennifer said. The third one, Morrison and Associates, was honest enough to forward Marcus's email to me and ask for my side of the story. I stared at the evidence spread across Jennifer's laptop screen. He systematically destroyed your career prospects. Tried to. Luckily, Morrison and Associates saw through his BS and hired me anyway. But Sarah, this proves Marcus has a pattern of using his legal connections and insider knowledge to retaliate against women who threaten him. My phone buzzed with a call from Detective Santos. Ms. Chen? We've subpoenaed the phone records for your workplace incident. But I'm calling because we just received some interesting information from James Whitmore. He says you might have additional evidence? Detective Santos, I'm sitting with Jennifer Walsh right now. She has recordings of Marcus Rodriguez making threats and engaging in workplace retaliation. This goes way beyond the fraud case. Can you both come to the station this afternoon? We're expanding this investigation. After hanging up, Jennifer and I sat in silence for a moment. Finally, she spoke. Sarah, are you sure you want to go through with this? Marcus is going to fight back hard. He'll try to destroy both of us. I thought about the 12 frantic text messages, the threats about my past, the calculated cruelty of making me think I might lose my apartment. Jennifer, he already destroyed my marriage and tried to make me homeless. What else can he possibly take from me? Your reputation. Your future job prospects. Marcus has connections throughout the legal and business community in this city. She was right. Going to war with Marcus meant risking everything. But then I remembered something Patricia had told me during our first divorce consultation. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let a bully think they've won. Let him try, I said, closing Jennifer's laptop. We have evidence, we have witnesses, and we have each other. Marcus's biggest mistake was thinking we'd stay isolated and scared. Jennifer smiled for the first time since I'd met her. All right then. Let's destroy this bastard. At the police station, Detective Santos spread Jennifer's evidence across the conference table like pieces of a puzzle finally coming together. The recordings, emails, and phone logs painted a picture of systematic harassment that made my stomach turn. This changes everything, Detective Santos said, reviewing Marcus's recorded conversation with Brad Sullivan. We're looking at criminal conspiracy, workplace retaliation, and now your identity fraud case has corroborating evidence of a pattern. Jennifer sat straighter. What do you mean? Mr. Rodriguez used his HR connections to manipulate your employment records, then contacted other firms to sabotage your job prospects. The same kind of insider manipulation he used to access Sarah's employee information. Detective Santos tapped the fraud report. It shows premeditation and systematic abuse of his professional position. My phone had been buzzing nonstop for the past hour, 17 missed calls from Marcus, 6 from unknown numbers that were probably him calling from different phones. I'd stopped checking the voicemails after the third one devolved into incoherent rambling about how I was ruining everything. Detective, how long before charges are filed? I asked. For the identity fraud? We can have those ready by Monday morning. But with Ms. Walsh's evidence, we're looking at a much bigger case. Conspiracy, criminal harassment, possible extortion. She looked between us. Ladies, this could take months to fully prosecute, and Marcus Rodriguez isn't going to go quietly. As if summoned by his name, Detective Santos's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. This is Detective Santos. I could hear shouting through the phone, though I couldn't make out words. Santos's expression grew increasingly grim. Sir, you need to calm down. Making threats against witnesses is a felony. No, I cannot arrange a meeting with Ms. Chin. Sir, I'm going to hang up now, and I suggest you contact your attorney. She ended the call and immediately started typing notes. That was your ex-husband, Sarah. He's demanding I drop the investigation and claiming you've fabricated evidence. He also made some very specific threats about what would happen if this case proceeded. Threats like what? Jennifer asked. He said he'd make sure both of you never work in the city again. That he has friends in every major firm and corporation who would blacklist you permanently. Detective Santos looked up from her notes. He also mentioned having compromising information about both of your personal lives that he'd release publicly. My blood went cold. What compromising information could Marcus possibly have about Jennifer? And what was he planning to fabricate about me? Jennifer's face had gone pale. He's bluffing, right? He can't actually follow through on those threats. Honestly? Given what we've seen so far, I wouldn't put anything past him, Detective Santos said. Which is why we need to move fast. I'm contacting the DA's office about expedited charges. The longer Marcus has to plan his counterattack, the more dangerous this gets for both of you. An hour later, as Jennifer and I walked out of the police station, I felt simultaneously empowered and terrified. We had evidence, we had law enforcement support, but we'd also just declared war against someone who'd already proven he was willing to commit felonies out of spite. Sarah, Jennifer said as we reached her car, there's something I didn't mention in there. About Marcus having compromising information. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? The file room incident I recorded? It wasn't the first time Marcus cornered me alone. The first time was at the firm holiday party in December. I'd had too much wine, and he. She trailed off, staring at her keys. Nothing happened, but he took photos. Said it was just for fun, but now I realize he was building leverage. Photos of what? Me looking drunk, stumbling slightly, my dress strap had fallen down. Innocent stuff that could be twisted to look really bad with the right spin. Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper. If he releases those with some fabricated story about inappropriate behavior. I grabbed her arm. Jennifer, we're not backing down because of some photos from a Christmas party. Marcus is counting on us being too scared to fight back. But even as I said it, I wondered what ammunition Marcus thought he had against me. Our marriage had been private, and I'd been careful about my digital footprint during the divorce. What could he possibly? Then it hit me. 2 years ago, during our marriage counseling sessions, I confided in Marcus about my anxiety medication. I'd been taking Xanax for panic attacks, prescribed by my doctor, completely legal. But Marcus had made me feel ashamed about it, suggesting I was dependent and unstable. If he spun that story to potential employers, claiming I had substance abuse issues or mental health problems that made me unreliable. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, check your email, Sarah. Time to be reasonable. Asterisk. I opened my email with shaking hands. The message from Marcus contained a single attachment labeled Sarah_documentation.pdf. The file contained photos of my prescription bottle, screenshots of texts where I'd mentioned feeling overwhelmed, and a detailed timeline of what he called my emotional instability during our marriage. He'd been documenting everything, building a case to destroy my credibility. The final page was a typed letter addressed to whom it may concern, describing me as an unstable individual with substance abuse issues who was fabricating criminal charges against my ex-husband out of spite. Jennifer read over my shoulder, her face grim. He's got similar files on both of us. This is what he does, he creates insurance policies against anyone who might threaten him. My hands were shaking as I forwarded everything to Detective Santos and Patricia. Marcus wasn't just fighting back, he'd been preparing for this war long before I even knew we were enemies. But as I stared at his carefully constructed character assassination, something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about stopping someone who systematically collected ammunition against the people in his life, someone who turned trust and intimacy into weapons. Jennifer, we're not backing down, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Marcus just made his biggest mistake yet. What do you mean? I held up my phone, showing the email. He just provided written evidence of premeditated harassment and witness intimidation. Detective Santos is going to love this. The war was officially on. 2 hours after Marcus sent his blackmail files, my phone rang with a call that changed everything. Sarah? This is Linda Morrison from Meridian Marketing. The VP of Human Resources sounded shaken. I need you to come in immediately. We've received some very disturbing communications about you. My blood turned to ice. What kind of communications? Someone claiming to be from the Chicago Bar Association sent an email saying you're under investigation for fraud and that we should terminate your employment immediately to avoid liability. They included what appears to be documentation of substance abuse and mental health issues. I closed my eyes, feeling Marcus's web tightening around me. Linda, that's not from the Bar Association. That's my ex-husband continuing his harassment campaign. Sarah, I want to believe you, but the email came from an official-looking address, ethics.investigationchicagobar@gmail.com. They knew specific details about your employment history, your salary, even your employee ID number. The bastard had created a fake email address designed to look official. Linda, please call the actual Chicago Bar Association. Ask them if they've sent any communications about me. I guarantee they haven't. I'll do that. But Sarah, I need to be honest. This situation is becoming a liability for the company. The Henderson campaign you've been managing, the client is asking questions about why their account manager was supposedly dead, then alive, and now potentially under criminal investigation. My career was disintegrating in real time. I understand your position, Linda, but I'm the victim here. I'm being systematically harassed by an attorney who's using his legal knowledge to destroy my life. Can you be here at 9 a.m. Monday morning? We need to sort this out before it affects more of our client relationships. After hanging up, I immediately called Detective Santos. He's escalating. Marcus just impersonated the Chicago Bar Association to get me fired. Forward me that email immediately. Creating fake official communications is another felony charge. Santos paused. Sarah, I need to ask, are you prepared for this to get worse before it gets better? Because Marcus Rodriguez is clearly willing to burn everything down to avoid consequences. Before I could answer, my apartment building's fire alarm started blaring. I grabbed my laptop and phone, rushing into the hallway where my neighbors were streaming toward the exits. Mrs. Patterson from 3B grabbed my arm. Sarah, the fire department says someone called in a gas leak in your unit specifically. They're evacuating the whole building. The timing couldn't be coincidental. I made it to the street and immediately called 911. 911, what's your emergency? This is Sarah Chen. Someone just filed a false emergency report about my apartment. This is connected to an ongoing harassment case. Detective Maria Santos with Financial Crimes can verify. 20 minutes later, the fire chief approached me with a grim expression. Ms. Chen? We've completed our inspection. There's no gas leak in your unit or anywhere else in the building. Someone called in a detailed false report, claiming to be your upstairs neighbor and saying they smelled gas coming through your vents. Did they leave a name? Marcus Chen. Said he was your brother and was worried about your safety. The same fake identity he'd used to report my death. Marcus wasn't just trying to get me fired, he was making it impossible for me to exist normally in my own life. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, Sarah, Marcus just showed up at my apartment building. Building security turned him away, but he was asking the doorman questions about my visitors and schedule. I'm staying at my sister's tonight, Then another text from an unknown number, Sarah, this is Brad Sullivan from Whitmore Sterling. We need to talk. Marcus is telling people you and Jennifer are working together to extort him. Can we meet tomorrow? There are things you need to know about what he's planning, I stared at the message, trying to process whether this was genuine outreach or another trap. Brad Sullivan was the associate on Jennifer's recording, the one Marcus had bragged to about solving the Jennifer Walsh problem. Detective Santos appeared at my side, having responded to the false emergency call. Ms. Chen, this has to stop. I'm putting an emergency protective order in place tonight. Marcus Rodriguez is prohibited from contacting you, your employer, your neighbors, or anyone else connected to you. Will that actually stop him? Probably not. But it gives us grounds to arrest him the moment he violates it. Santos studied the crowd of displaced residents. Pack a bag. You're not staying here tonight. He knows where you live, where you work, and he's clearly monitoring your routines. As I packed essentials in my apartment under police supervision, my phone rang. Patricia, my divorce attorney. Sarah, emergency hearing moved to tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Marcus filed a motion claiming you're mentally unstable and trying to extort him. He's requesting the divorce be delayed pending a psychological evaluation. He's trying to trap me in this marriage longer. Exactly. And Sarah? Marcus just hired Catherine Volkov as co-counsel. My stomach dropped. Catherine Volkov was the most ruthless divorce attorney in Chicago, known for destroying opposing parties through character assassination and legal warfare. What does that mean for us? It means Marcus is preparing for total war. Volkov doesn't take cases unless she's confident she can annihilate the other side. Patricia's voice was grim. Sarah, are you absolutely certain you want to continue this fight? Because after tomorrow morning, there's no going back. I looked around my apartment, the home I'd built after leaving Marcus, the life I'd carefully reconstructed. He was systematically destroying all of it, and now he'd escalated to professional help. But then I thought about Jennifer, hiding at her sister's house because Marcus was stalking her building. I thought about the next woman who would cross his path, the next person who would become a target for his calculated cruelty. Patricia, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Good. Because we're going to need Jennifer's testimony tomorrow, and I have a feeling Catherine Volkov is going to try to destroy both of you on the stand. As I zipped up my overnight bag, I realized Marcus had made a critical error. By hiring Volkov and escalating to emergency motions, he'd created a public court record of his desperation. Tomorrow morning, his careful facade of respectability would crumble in front of a judge. The scared woman checking her bank balance a few days ago was gone completely. War it was. That night, I stayed at my friend Lisa's apartment across town, barely sleeping as I rehearsed testimony for the morning hearing. At 3:47 a.m., Lisa shook me awake. "Sarah, your phone's been buzzing nonstop." I grabbed it to find 14 missed calls from Detective Santos. My blood ran cold as I called her back. "Sarah, thank God. We have a problem. Marcus Rodriguez was just arrested trying to break into Meridian Marketing's offices." "What?" "Building security caught him on the 32nd floor at 2:15 a.m. He had a keycard, we think he cloned yours somehow, and was attempting to access the HR department computers. He told security he was there to collect evidence of his ex-wife's employment fraud." I sat up fully, my mind racing. "He was trying to plant evidence in my personnel file." "That's what we think. Security footage shows him with a laptop and several USB drives. We arrested him on breaking and entering charges, but Sarah, this complicates tomorrow's hearing significantly." "How?" "Catherine Volkov is already spinning this as Marcus desperately trying to gather proof of your alleged fraud against the company. She's claiming he had permission to be there as your spouse, which technically he still is until the divorce finalizes." My stomach dropped. Even in custody, Marcus was still playing chess while I was learning the rules. At 6 a.m., Patricia called with worse news. "Sarah, Volkov filed an emergency motion an hour ago. She's claiming Marcus's arrest was orchestrated by you and Jennifer as part of your extortion scheme. She has affidavits from 3 Whitmore Sterling associates saying Marcus has been acting erratically due to his wife's escalating threats and false accusations." "3 associates? Who?" "Brad Sullivan, Amanda Foster, and Michael Chen, apparently a coincidence on the last name. They all swear Marcus has been receiving harassing calls and emails from unknown numbers, that he's been losing sleep and making mistakes at work because of the stress you caused." The manipulation was breathtaking. Marcus had convinced his colleagues that he was the victim, probably by showing them edited versions of our interactions while hiding his own behavior. "Patricia, what about Jennifer's recordings? The evidence of his pattern?" "Volkov is claiming the recordings were illegally obtained and edited. She's brought in a forensic audio expert who says they've been manipulated to create false impressions." Patricia's voice was tight with frustration. "Sarah, they're not just defending, they're launching a full counteroffensive." At 7:30 a.m., I stood outside Judge Morrison's courtroom watching Catherine Volkov arrange her materials with military precision. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with steel gray hair and the kind of sharp suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Marcus sat beside her looking haggard but defiant. When he saw me, he leaned over to whisper something to Volkov, who glanced at me with undisguised contempt. Jennifer arrived with her attorney, David Park, looking pale but determined. "Sarah, did you hear about the break-in?" "Detective Santos called me." "How is this helping his case?" "David thinks Volkov is going to claim Marcus was so distraught about our conspiracy that he made desperate mistakes. Paint him as the real victim driven to extremes." All rise for the Honorable Judge Helen Morrison. As we stood, I caught sight of someone unexpected in the gallery, James Whitmore himself, sitting in the back row with a grim expression. Why would the senior partner attend a divorce hearing unless? "Your Honor," Volkov began, "my client stands before you as a victim of coordinated harassment by his estranged wife and her accomplice, Jennifer Walsh. What began as a bitter divorce has escalated into criminal extortion designed to destroy Mr. Rodriguez's career and reputation." She gestured toward Marcus with theatrical sympathy. "The stress of these false accusations has driven my client to act irrationally. His arrest last night, attempting to gather evidence to defend himself, demonstrates the psychological toll this campaign has taken." Judge Morrison looked skeptical. "Ms. Volkov, your client was caught breaking into a private office building at 2 a.m. That's hardly rational behavior." "Your Honor, when someone's entire life's work is under attack through fabricated evidence and coordinated lies, desperate measures become understandable. Mr. Rodriguez believed, wrongly, perhaps, that accessing his wife's employment records might prove her allegations were motivated by financial gain rather than truth." I watched the judge's face, trying to read her reaction. Volkov was good, she was reframing every piece of evidence as proof of Marcus's victimhood rather than his guilt. "Ms. Vance," Judge Morrison said, "your response?" Patricia stood, her voice steady and cold. "Your Honor, the defendant's own actions tell the real story. Identity fraud, workplace harassment, stalking, filing false emergency reports, these aren't the desperate acts of a victim. They're the calculated moves of someone who believes he's above the law." She pulled out Jennifer's recordings. "We have documented evidence of Mr. Rodriguez's systematic harassment of multiple women, including recorded threats and admissions of professional retaliation." Volkov immediately objected. "Your Honor, those recordings were obtained through illegal surveillance and have been forensically proven to be manipulated." "I'll hear the recordings," Judge Morrison decided. "But I want both audio experts to present their findings first." As the technical testimony began, I noticed James Whitmore had moved closer, now sitting just 2 rows behind us. When our eyes met, he nodded grimly and mouthed something that looked like, "We need to talk." Whatever Whitmore knew, it was significant enough to bring him to court personally. But would it be enough to counter Volkov's expertly crafted narrative of Marcus's victim? The war was far from over. The forensic audio expert Catherine Volkov had brought was impressive, Dr. Richard Hayes from Northwestern, with credentials that filled 2 pages. He analyzed Jennifer's recordings with a kind of technical precision that made my head spin. In my professional opinion, Dr. Hayes testified, adjusting his glasses, these audio files show clear signs of digital manipulation. Specifically, sections between 247 and 312 in Exhibit A appear to have been spliced from different conversations and reassembled to create misleading context. My heart sank as he continued dissecting Jennifer's evidence with surgical precision. He pointed to waveform patterns on his laptop screen, explaining how modern editing software could seamlessly blend separate conversations into damning narratives. But then Patricia stood for cross-examination, and her first question changed everything. "Dr. Hayes, who retained your services for this analysis?" "Catherine Volkov's firm contacted me Tuesday evening." "Tuesday evening. And when did you complete your analysis?" "I worked through the night. Finished around 6 a.m. this morning." Patricia smiled coldly. So you completed a forensic analysis of 17 separate audio files, totaling 43 minutes of conversation, in approximately 8 hours? Dr. Hayes shifted uncomfortably. I'm very efficient in my methods. Dr. Hayes, according to your own published research from 2019, you stated that proper forensic audio analysis requires a minimum of 6 hours per minute of source material to detect sophisticated manipulation. That would mean these files required approximately 258 hours of analysis time. Volkov objected, but Judge Morrison was already leaning forward with interest. Dr. Hayes, the judge said, please explain this discrepancy. Well, Your Honor, I conducted a preliminary analysis focused on the most obviously problematic sections. So your testimony about digital manipulation is based on incomplete analysis? Patricia pressed. The timeline was compressed due to the emergency nature of this hearing. Judge Morrison looked disgusted. Dr. Hayes, you may step down. Ms. Volkov, I'm striking your expert's testimony as premature and unreliable. As the courtroom buzzed, I noticed Marcus whispering frantically to Volkov, his composed facade cracking. James Whitmore was taking notes, his expression growing darker. Your Honor, Patricia continued, I'd like to call James Whitmore to the stand. The entire courtroom fell silent. Volkov shot to her feet. Objection. Mr. Whitmore isn't on the witness list. Your Honor, Mr. Whitmore contacted me this morning with information directly relevant to Mr. Rodriguez's character and credibility. Judge Morrison nodded. I'll allow it. Mr. Whitmore, please approach the bench. As the senior partner walked forward, Marcus looked like he might be sick. Whatever Whitmore was about to reveal, Marcus knew it would be devastating. Mr. Whitmore, Patricia began, how long has Marcus Rodriguez been employed by your firm? 18 months. He was hired as a third-year associate in January of last year. And during that time, have you received any complaints about his conduct? Whitmore glanced at Marcus, then back at Patricia. Yes. Multiple complaints. Volkov stood again. Your Honor, this is irrelevant too. I'll decide what's relevant, Judge Morrison snapped. Continue, Mr. Whitmore. Beyond Ms. Walsh's harassment complaint, we've received concerns from 3 other female employees. Additionally, yesterday we discovered that Mr. Rodriguez has been accessing confidential HR databases without authorization for the past 6 months. My pulse quickened. Marcus had been systematically collecting information on his coworkers. What kind of information was he accessing? Patricia asked. Personal files, background checks, salary information, disciplinary records. We believe he was building profiles on anyone he perceived as a potential threat to his position. Marcus finally cracked. That's a lie, he shouted, half rising from his chair. James, you know I was conducting legitimate research for the... Mr. Rodriguez, Judge Morrison's voice was ice, sit down and be quiet. Volkov grabbed Marcus's arm, forcing him back into his seat, but the damage was done. His outburst had shattered the victim narrative she'd spent all morning constructing. Mr. Whitmore, Patricia continued, what is your firm's position regarding Mr. Rodriguez's continued employment? As of this morning, Marcus Rodriguez has been terminated for cause. We're also cooperating fully with law enforcement regarding potential criminal charges. The courtroom erupted. Volkov was on her feet objecting, Marcus was arguing with her in heated whispers, and Judge Morrison was banging her gavel for order. Through the chaos, I caught sight of Detective Santos slipping into the back of the courtroom. She made eye contact with me and nodded toward the door. Something else was happening. Detective Santos caught up with me during the 10-minute recess Judge Morrison called after Marcus's outburst. Her expression was grim as she pulled me into a quiet corner of the courthouse hallway. Sarah, we have a problem. While Marcus was in custody last night, someone accessed your apartment. My blood turned to ice. What do you mean accessed? Your landlord called this morning. A man claiming to be your brother Marcus Chin showed up with what appeared to be a court order, saying he needed to collect evidence for your divorce proceedings. The document looked official enough that building management let him in. I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. But Marcus was in jail. Exactly. Which means he has an accomplice. Detective Santos pulled out her phone, showing me a grainy security photo. Building cameras caught this. The figure was tall, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, but something about the posture looked familiar. My stomach dropped as recognition hit. That's Brad Sullivan. The associate from Whitmore Sterling. The same Brad Sullivan who provided an affidavit saying Marcus was being harassed by you? Yes. My mind raced through the implications. Detective, what did they take from my apartment? That's what we need to figure out. I need you to come with me after this hearing to assess what's missing. Before I could respond, Patricia appeared at my elbow. Sarah, we need to get back in there. Volkov is requesting an emergency recess to address new developments, but Judge Morrison is pushing forward. As we walked back into the courtroom, I noticed Brad Sullivan sitting in the gallery now, 3 rows behind Marcus. He wasn't trying to hide his presence. In fact, when he saw me looking, he gave a slight nod like we were old acquaintances. The boldness of it was chilling. These men weren't just coordinating their legal strategy, they were operating like a criminal conspiracy in plain sight. Judge Morrison resumed with barely controlled irritation. Ms. Volkov, I trust you're ready to proceed without any more surprise expert witnesses? Your Honor, given Mr. Whitmore's testimony, we request a continuance to properly address these new allegations. Denied. Your client has already caused enough delays with his criminal behavior. We're finishing this today. Volkov looked rattled for the first time. In that case, I'd like to call Brad Sullivan to testify about Mr. Rodriguez's state of mind and the harassment he's endured. Patricia immediately objected. Your Honor, Mr. Sullivan isn't on the witness list, and Ms. Volkov just argued that unscheduled witnesses shouldn't be allowed. Sustained. Judge Morrison fixed Volkov with a withering stare. You can't have it both ways, counselor. As Volkov scrambled to regroup, I leaned over to whisper to Patricia. Brad Sullivan broke into my apartment last night while Marcus was in custody. Detective Santos has security footage. Patricia's eyes widened. She immediately requested a sidebar with the judge. While they huddled in heated conversation, I watched Marcus and Brad exchange worried glances. Whatever they'd stolen from my apartment, they'd expected to use it today. Now their timeline was collapsing. Marcus pulled out his phone, a violation of courtroom rules, and started typing frantically before the bailiff noticed and confiscated it. But I'd seen enough of the message to catch 2 words, Plan B. Judge Morrison returned to the bench looking thunderous. Ms. Volkov, I'm informed that your client may have been engaged in ongoing criminal conspiracy involving illegal entry and theft. This hearing is adjourned pending police investigation. Your Honor, these are unsubstantiated. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Rodriguez back into custody. Detective Santos, you have jurisdiction here. As chaos erupted around me, I watched Brad Sullivan slip quietly toward the exit. But Detective Santos was faster, intercepting him at the courtroom door with 2 uniformed officers. Mr. Sullivan, we need to discuss your whereabouts last night. The confident smirk finally disappeared from his face as the handcuffs clicked into place. Marcus was shouting something about his rights as they led him away, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was thinking about what they might have taken from my apartment and why they thought it was worth risking everything to get it. Whatever Plan B was, we were about to find out. 2 hours after the courthouse drama, I stood in my ransacked apartment with Detective Santos, trying to process the methodical destruction around me. This wasn't random vandalism, every drawer had been carefully searched, every closet systematically rifled through. They were looking for something specific, Detective Santos said, photographing overturned furniture. Any idea what Marcus might have thought you were hiding? I picked up scattered papers from my desk, trying to inventory what was missing. My laptop was untouched, my jewelry still in its box. But then I noticed the gap in my filing cabinet where I kept financial documents. My divorce paperwork, I said, cold realization washing over me. All the financial disclosure forms, bank statements from our marriage, the asset division worksheets, it's all gone. Detective Santos looked up sharply. Why would he want those? He already has copies from his attorney. I sank onto my couch, pieces clicking together. Because mine had Patricia's handwritten notes in the margins. Strategy notes about hidden assets we suspected Marcus was concealing. During our marriage, Marcus had been secretive about his finances. Patricia had noted discrepancies between his reported income and our actual spending patterns. We'd suspected offshore accounts or hidden investments, but hadn't been able to prove anything before he filed for divorce. What kind of hidden assets? Detective Santos asked. Patricia found evidence suggesting Marcus diverted client settlement funds into personal cryptocurrency accounts. Nothing definitive, but enough to warrant investigation. I rubbed my temples, feeling the implications spiral. If he took those files, he knows exactly what we suspected and how close we were to proving it. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, *emergency. Meet me at my office immediately. We have a problem, *. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Patricia in her downtown law office, watching her pace frantically behind her desk. Her usually perfect composure was shattered. Sarah, I've been served with a federal subpoena. The FBI wants all our files related to your divorce case. The FBI? Why would they? I stopped, understanding flooding through me. The cryptocurrency investigation. It gets worse. I just got off the phone with AUSA Margaret Chin, no relation, from the Financial Crimes Division. They've been investigating Whitmore Sterling for months based on client complaints about missing settlement funds. My stomach dropped. Marcus wasn't just hiding assets from me. He was stealing from clients. According to the FBI, potentially millions of dollars across dozens of cases. They think Marcus was skimming percentages from settlement payments and converting them to cryptocurrency using offshore exchanges. Patricia sat heavily in her chair. Sarah, if this is true, your divorce case just became a federal criminal investigation. But that's good, right? It proves Marcus is a criminal. Maybe. Or maybe it makes you look like an accomplice who only came forward when the marriage fell apart. Patricia's voice was grim. The timing is suspicious. Wife discovers husband's crimes, files for divorce, then reports him to authorities. The FBI might think you were involved all along. Before I could respond, Patricia's secretary knocked urgently. Ms. Vance? There are federal agents here to see you both. Special Agent David Kim was younger than I'd expected, with a kind of intense focus that made me feel like every word was being analyzed. His partner, Agent Lisa Rodriguez, seemed more sympathetic but equally sharp. Ms. Chen, Agent Kim began, we understand you've made serious allegations against your husband regarding financial fraud. We need to discuss what you knew and when you knew it. I didn't know anything, I said, probably too quickly. I suspected something was wrong with our finances, but Marcus handled all the business accounts. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. Ms. Chen, during your marriage, did you notice any unusual financial patterns? Large cash deposits, expensive purchases that didn't match his reported income, frequent travel to countries with bank secrecy laws? The questions triggered uncomfortable memories. Marcus's sudden interest in business trips to Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. His insistence on handling all tax filings privately. The cryptocurrency trading account he'd claimed was just a hobby. He said he was diversifying our investments, I admitted. But he never let me see the actual accounts. Did you ever sign documents related to these investments? Agent Kim asked. My blood turned cold as I remembered. Yes. Tax forms, some banking documents. Marcus said it was routine paperwork for married couples filing jointly. Agent Rodriguez and Agent Kim exchanged meaningful looks. Ms. Chen, Agent Rodriguez said gently, we're going to need you to come in for a formal interview. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the Federal Building. After they left, Patricia and I sat in stunned silence. Finally, she spoke. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Did you ever suspect Marcus was stealing from clients? Never. I knew something was off about our personal finances, but I thought maybe he was hiding assets to screw me in the divorce. I never imagined. I trailed off, processing the magnitude. Patricia, am I going to prison? Not if you cooperate fully and tell the truth. But Sarah, this changes everything. The identity fraud, the harassment, the break-ins, Marcus wasn't just trying to win the divorce. He was trying to silence the one person who might expose a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't just been fighting a vindictive ex-husband. I'd been threatening to uncover one of the biggest legal fraud cases in the city's history. And now the FBI thought I might be his accomplice. The FBI interview room felt like something out of a crime drama: stark white walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, and a mirror that was obviously one-way glass. Agent Kim placed a thick manila folder in front of me, its contents hidden but somehow menacing. Ms. Chen, before we begin, I want to clarify your status. You're not under arrest, but you're not free to leave. You're what we call a person of interest in an ongoing federal investigation. Agent Rodriguez activated a recording device. This is Special Agent Rodriguez, case number FB 2024-7891, interviewing Sarah Chen regarding financial crimes allegedly committed by Marcus Rodriguez. Present are Agent Kim, attorney Patricia Vance, and the subject. They started with seemingly innocent questions about our marriage timeline, Marcus's work habits, our social circle. But I could feel them building towards something bigger, each answer becoming another piece in a puzzle I couldn't see. Ms. Chen, Agent Kim said, opening the folder, I'm showing you Exhibit A47. Do you recognize this signature? The document was a wire transfer authorization for $847,000, dated 6 months ago. My signature was clearly visible at the bottom, right next to Marcus's. My blood turned to ice. I remember signing banking documents, but Marcus said they were routine investment transfers. I never saw any dollar amounts like this. This transfer moved money from the Hendricks personal injury settlement into an account registered under both your names, Agent Rodriguez explained. The Hendricks family was supposed to receive $1.2 million. Instead, they got $353,000. I stared at the document, my own signature seeming to mock me. I didn't know. Marcus brought me a stack of papers one evening, said they were tax-related forms that needed both our signatures. I was exhausted from work and I trusted him. Agent Kim pulled out another document. Here's Exhibit A52. Another transfer, this one for $623,000 from the Morrison wrongful death case. Again, your signature. Then another. And another. 7 documents total, representing over $4 million in client funds diverted into accounts I apparently co-owned but had never seen. Ms. Chen, Agent Rodriguez said, not unkindly, you can understand why this looks suspicious. A wife claims ignorance about her husband's crimes, but her signature appears on every fraudulent transaction. Patricia finally spoke up. Agents, my client was clearly manipulated into signing these documents under false pretenses. This is spousal financial abuse, not willing conspiracy. Maybe, Agent Kim said. But we've interviewed 3 other attorneys' wives in similar situations over the past decade. None of them signed transfer documents. They all insisted on understanding what they were authorizing. The implication hung heavy in the air. Either I was uniquely naive, or I was lying about my involvement. There's something else, Agent Rodriguez said, producing a printed email chain. These are communications between your husband and Brad Sullivan discussing what they call the Sarah problem. They're from last month, before your identity fraud complaint. I read the messages with growing horror. Asterisk Marcus, Sarah's asking too many questions about the Cayman account. Think she's getting suspicious asterisk. Asterisk Brad, can you redirect her attention? Maybe create some drama with the divorce proceedings, asterisk. Asterisk Marcus, already on it. If she gets too close, we might need to discredit her completely. Good thing I kept copies of those transfer documents with her signature, asterisk. Asterisk Brad, insurance policy. Smart. How many clients are we talking about total, asterisk? Asterisk Marcus, 17 cases, $8.2 million moved. Sarah signed for about half of it, asterisk. My hands were shaking as I finished reading. They were planning this. Marcus wasn't just hiding assets for the divorce, he was setting me up to take the fall for his embezzlement scheme. Agent Kim leaned back in his chair. That's an interesting theory, Ms. Chen. But from our perspective, it looks like a criminal conspiracy that fell apart when you decided to divorce your partner. That's not what happened. Then help us understand what did happen, Agent Rodriguez said. Because right now, the evidence suggests you were a willing participant who only came forward when the marriage collapsed. Patricia squeezed my arm in warning. Agents, my client has been cooperative and forthcoming. If you're planning to charge her, we need to know now. Agent Kim closed the folder. No charges at this time. But Ms. Chen, you need to understand the gravity of this situation. 17 families received reduced settlements because of these transfers. Children who should have college funds, widows who should have retirement security, they're all victims of this scheme. And your signature is on the documents that stole from them, Agent Rodriguez added. As we left the federal building an hour later, I felt like I was drowning. The identity fraud case that had seemed so clear-cut was now tangled up in a federal embezzlement investigation where I looked like either a victim or a co-conspirator. Patricia, tell me honestly, I said as we reached her car. Do you think they're going to arrest me? She was quiet for a long moment. I think they're waiting to see what Marcus and Brad tell them. If those two flip on each other and implicate you as a willing participant. She shook her head. Sarah, we need to find evidence that proves you were manipulated, not complicit. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Santos. Asterisk Sarah, we found something in Marcus's office at Whitmore Sterling. You need to see this immediately, asterisk. Whatever they discovered, it was about to change everything again. Detective Santos met us at the Whitmore Sterling building, where federal agents were loading boxes of evidence into unmarked vans. The prestigious law firm looked like a crime scene, with yellow tape blocking access to entire floors. Sarah, we found Marcus's real insurance policy, Santos said, leading us through the lobby past stunned-looking attorneys. He wasn't just documenting your signatures on those transfer documents. He was recording everything. My stomach dropped. Recording what? Conversations, phone calls, video of you signing documents. He has hours of footage proving you had no idea what you were actually authorizing. Santos pulled out an evidence bag containing a small digital camera. Hidden in his home office bookshelf. Motion activated, been recording for over 2 years. We rode the elevator to the 42nd floor, where Agent Rodriguez was waiting with a laptop. Ms. Chen, we need you to verify some of these recordings before we can use them as evidence. The first video file showed me in Marcus's home office 8 months ago, visibly exhausted after a 14-hour workday. Marcus handed me a stack of papers while I rubbed my eyes. Just sign where I marked, sweetheart. Tax amendments from the accountant. Nothing exciting. On screen, I barely glanced at the documents before signing. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. Marcus had deliberately waited until I was exhausted and unlikely to read carefully. He drugged me, I said suddenly, the memory flooding back. That night, I'd had wine with dinner. Just one glass, but I felt unusually tired afterward. I thought I was just stressed from work. Agent Rodriguez paused the video. What do you mean drugged? I rarely drink, and when I do, one glass doesn't affect me like that. But I remember feeling disoriented, having trouble focusing on the papers. I stared at my on-screen self, swaying slightly as I signed document after document. Look at my pupils in that video. Do they look normal to you? Detective Santos leaned closer to the laptop screen. They're dilated. Consistent with benzodiazepine intoxication. We'll need blood work from that time period, Agent Rodriguez said, making notes. Do you remember feeling sick the next day? Horrible headache, nausea. Marcus said I was coming down with something and insisted I stay home from work. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. He planned the whole thing. Got me incapacitated, had me sign the transfers, then made sure I was too sick the next day to remember clearly what had happened. Agent Rodriguez clicked to the next video file. This one was from 3 months later, showing Marcus coaching Brad Sullivan on their story. If anyone asks, Sarah was fully aware of the investment strategy, Marcus said on screen. She signed everything voluntarily after asking detailed questions about the returns we were expecting. What if she denies it? Brad's voice was clearly audible. That's why we have the videos. Look confused and cooperative, but not too knowledgeable. Classic spouse defense, I trusted my husband to handle our finances. Marcus laughed coldly. The beauty is, even if she figures out what really happened, who's going to believe her over 17 signed documents? Jesus Christ, Patricia muttered. He was planning to frame you from the beginning. The final video file was from just 2 weeks ago, after our separation but before I'd filed the fraud complaint. Marcus was on a phone call with someone whose voice I didn't recognize. The divorce is getting complicated. Sarah's attorney is asking about the cryptocurrency accounts. Marcus paced anxiously. We might need to accelerate the timeline. Can you discredit her before she finds anything concrete? The voice asked. Already working on it. I've got a plan to eliminate her income, make her look unstable and vindictive. If that doesn't work, we use the transfer documents to flip the script completely. Agent Rodriguez stopped the recording. Ms. Chen, do you recognize that second voice? I listened to the clip again, something nagging at me about the speaker's tone and cadence. It sounds familiar, but I can't place it. Detective Santos was studying her notes. Sarah, this changes your status completely. You're not a suspect anymore, you're a victim of systematic fraud and criminal conspiracy. What happens now? I asked. Now we arrest everyone involved in this scheme, Agent Rodriguez said grimly. And we start tracking down every penny they stole from those families. As we left the building, I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief that the evidence proved my innocence, but rage at how completely Marcus had manipulated me. For over 2 years, he'd been using our marriage as cover for a multi-million-dollar theft operation, drugging me when necessary to get my cooperation. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Sarah, it's James Whitmore. We need to meet immediately. There's something about this case that you don't understand yet, and it's going to get much worse before it gets better. The call disconnected before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone in the middle of downtown Chicago, wondering what could possibly be worse than what I'd already discovered. James Whitmore's meeting turned out to be the sentencing hearing 6 months later. I sat in the front row of Judge Morrison's courtroom, watching Marcus in his orange jumpsuit as the judge delivered his fate. Marcus Rodriguez, you have been found guilty on 17 counts of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit embezzlement, identity theft, and criminal harassment. The court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. Marcus's shoulders sagged as the bailiff approached with handcuffs. Catherine Volkov, who'd somehow managed to avoid disbarment despite her client's lies, gathered her papers with professional detachment. Additionally, Judge Morrison continued, you are ordered to pay $8.2 million in restitution to the affected families, plus $127,000 in damages to Ms. Chen for the financial hardship you caused through your fraudulent schemes. Brad Sullivan had been sentenced the previous week to 8 years for his role in the conspiracy. The FBI had traced the embezzlement operation back 3 years, involving 23 different client settlements. Both men would be disbarred permanently. As they led Marcus away, he finally looked at me for the first time since his arrest. I expected to feel satisfaction, maybe even pity. Instead, I felt nothing but relief that it was finally over. Outside the courthouse, Detective Santos handed me a check from the restitution fund. $127,000, as ordered by the court. Covers your lost wages, legal fees, and damages for emotional distress. Patricia smiled beside me. Plus the divorce settlement. Since Marcus's assets were proceeds from criminal activity, the court awarded you full ownership of a legitimate marital property. The house, his retirement accounts, everything. I stared at the numbers, still processing. What about the families he stole from? The FBI recovered $6.8 million from his cryptocurrency accounts, Detective Santos said. It's not everything, but it's enough to give those families most of what was stolen. Jennifer appeared at my elbow, grinning widely. Sarah. Did you hear? I just got promoted to senior paralegal at Morrison & Associates. Turns out having federal agents validate your harassment complaint is great for your credibility. We walked down the courthouse steps together, past the gaggle of reporters who'd covered the Whitmore-Sterling embezzlement scandal. The law firm had dissolved entirely after the FBI investigation revealed systematic client fund theft going back over a decade. So what's next for you? Jennifer asked. I pulled out my phone and showed her the email I'd received that morning. Marketing director position at Chen & Associates. Turns out Margaret Chen from the U.S. Attorney's Office is married to David Chen, who owns a boutique consulting firm downtown. No relation to me, but she was impressed enough with how I handled this whole mess that she recommended me. From victim to hero to marketing director, Patricia laughed. That's quite a career trajectory. As we reached the street, my phone buzzed with a final text from the number Marcus had used to harass me months ago. For a split second, my blood ran cold, then I realized it was from Detective Santos, who'd confiscated his phone. Asterisk Sarah, this is Santos. Found this draft message Marcus wrote but never sent. I'm sorry for everything. You deserved so much better than what I put you through. Thought you might want to know he had some moments of clarity, even if he never found the courage to send it asterisk. I deleted the message without responding. Marcus's apologies, real or manufactured, didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that 17 families would get their money back, Jennifer was thriving in her new job, and I was finally free. 6 months after discovering my paycheck had stopped because my ex-husband convinced my employer I was dead, I was alive, vindicated, and moving forward with a life he could never touch again. The best revenge, it turned out, was simply surviving his worst efforts to destroy me. And I had never felt more alive.